this. So thank you guys for being here. Last thing we want to talk about for the year again are our sum and difference formulas. Now, in some ways, these might seem a little bit silly. Like, well, why do I need to know these? You know, I could just utilize a calculator. This is great for angles that can like help us get a few more different angles and get those exact answers. So for sine of A plus B, we can break it apart as sine of A times cosine of B plus cosine of A times sine of B. If it's a minus for the sine, like sine of A minus B, the formula just changes the sign in the middle. So it's sine of A times cosine of B minus cosine of A sine of B. Now, cosine works a little differently. So that's why, you know, these are a little tricky, you know. Definitely having like this cheat sheet of what each of them are is really helpful. Cosine of A plus B works cosine of A times cosine of B minus sine of A times the sine of B. So cosine does get a little tricky in there. For addition and cosine, we actually use a minus sign in between. If I do the cosine of A minus B, that can be broken up as, again, cosine of A times cosine of B, now plus sine of A times the sine of B. Tangent is a little more complicated looking. So tangent of A plus B is tangent of A plus tangent of B minus 1 over the tangent of A times the tangent of B. If it's a minus, we just change the plus in the numerator to a minus, the minus in the denominator to a plus. So those are the general forms. Again, this is posted for you inside of Schoology. Let's see how they actually work. So I'm going to do something like looking for the sine of 75 degrees. Now, oftentimes we'll do this with, we can do the exact same thing with radians, but I decide to use degrees on this because you're more familiar with this. So sine of 75 degrees, well, 75 can be written as 45 plus 30. 45 and 30 are both on the unit circle. So I can say, okay, I know those values because I have those memorized, and we can utilize that to actually get the value of the sine of 75. So sine of 45 plus 30 is going to be equal to, remember, sine was sine times cosine, AB, then cosine times sine. So it's going to be the sine of 45 times the cosine of 30 plus now the sine, no, sorry, switch the order, it's cosine then sine, and the cosine of 45 times the sine of 30. Okay, now here's where the unit circle memorization comes in. Sine of 45. So again, sine starts at 0, goes up to 1/2, then is root 2 over 2. So sine of 45 is root 2 over 2 times the cosine of 30. Let's see, cosine starts at 1 because it's our x value, so that means we're counting down. So that would be root 3 over 2. Plus, now cosine of 45, well, that's another root 2 over 2. And then the sine of 30, again, sine starting at 0, so that means my first movement up to 30 degrees takes me to 1/2. So now this is just a matter of simplifying here. Root 2 times root 3, gives me the square root of 6 over 4 plus square root of 2 over 4. This is not much I could do here. This is just square root of 6 plus the square root of 2 all over 4. And that's it. That's how we can handle that ourselves, utilizing information we already know. So let's actually check that this works out. So remember, I want to be in degrees. So hit the wrench, degrees. So if I say the sine of 75, that gives me that. So let's say, see here, I said square root of 6 plus the square root of 2 all over 4. Bam. Same decimal. There we go. It works out. Cool. Let's look at a difference one. Now we're going to look at the cosine of 15 degrees. Now, one thing I'm going to say here before we get into this, I am already predicting I get the same answer as the last time, because if I draw a right triangle here, if I was at 75 degrees, I was doing sine that was opposite over hypotenuse. Now, if that's 75, that makes this angle 15. This opposite side now becomes the adjacent side, and this is the hypotenuse. So this should be operating off the exact same triangle as the last problem. So again, my prediction is I should get square root of 6 plus square root of 2 all over 4. Let's see if that's how this actually works out. So in theory, right now it's saying, well, that is the same triangle. Like I said, this is 75. That makes that 15. So now the opposite became the adjacent. So yeah, cosine of 15 should match sine of 75 because they are complementary angles. So for cosine with a minus, I want to do cosine of A times cosine of B plus sine of A, sine of B. Okay, so I'm going to do, starts out cosines, not sines. Cosine of 45 times the cosine of 30 plus the sine of 45 times the cosine of 30. So cosine of 45, well, we just said last time that was root 2 over 2. Cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2 from, again, the unit circle. And then this will be sine of 45 is root 2 over 2. Cosine of 30 is 1/2. So actually, this looks like the exact same math we just did. This part in red does it, but once we get the numbers in there in blue, we're looking good. So that's going to be square root of 6 over 4 plus square root of 2 over 4, which is root 6 plus root 2 all over 4. And that's it. Again, we can check this in the calculator. So if I go now cosine of 15, again, we get that same decimal happening. So that's really the last thing I got for you guys. Keep working hard. Next year is senior year, so I'm excited for you guys, ready to see you guys graduate and celebrate you just like the seniors we're sending off in the next week. So thank you guys. Stop recording.